The truth behind the Tesla attacks. A new report exposing the left-wing movement, the damage, and the dark money donors behind it all. Next. Bronson Winslow is my guest. He is the reporter and editor behind a truly eye-opening investigation at Restoration News. Thanks for being here, Bronson. Really great reporting.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, we have experienced protests and damage at Tesla dealerships here in the Twin Cities. We've even made headlines in national news, received the unwanted attention after a state employee, Dylan Adams, was charged with keying at least 6 Teslas in Minneapolis and given diversion by our Soros-backed prosecutor, Mary Moriarty, in Hennepin County. But from a broader perspective, you've done the work. Give us some stats about how widespread the damage and destruction has been.
Of course, the damage is very extensive. Just for personally owned Teslas, over 100 have been vandalized, whether that's keyed or defecated upon, spray painted, burnt to the ground, and that's about $2 million of damages so far. When you look at charging stations and dealerships, the numbers go up even further. There's about 15 different stalls that have been vandalized, and it's estimated around $12 million worth of damage. And then the dealership damages are about $4.5 million. So aside from the large market cap drop in the stock price with Tesla, you're looking at about $20 million of personal damages that people on the ground are having to deal with because of the situation.
Wow. And I know this is spread all across the globe at this point. Corporate media, of course, has been trying to pass this off as nothing more than a passionate individuals. They're getting upset about President Trump and Elon Musk as if it were just something to do on the weekend. But your report reveals there is a lot more going on and a lot of money behind all of this, right, Bronson?
Of course, it's not the grassroots organizations that they like to paint themselves as. When you look into the funding, you start to realize, okay, these are corporate polished DC establishment backed groups, and the money comes from the same people. You're looking at the Ties Foundation, you're looking at Soros, you're looking at Reid Hoffman and Act Blue. So as much as they like to paint this as a grassroots kind of formation, it's simply a rendition of BLM. It's just one more front of the left pushing their own money and puppeteering these ideas for people on the ground.
You highlight a number of these groups in your report. One of them as the Disruption Project. It actually encourages vandalism and sabotage, right, for everyone to see. Right on their website, you'll find advice about how to find a target's home address, tips for jail support, all right there. What else can you tell us about the Disruption Project?
Well, the website alone says a lot. When you look at the things that they push, it immediately tells you, okay, this group is not up to good things. They're not here to help people. But the real kicker that had me decide to look further into it was the idea that, okay, this is a grassroots group with a Silicon Valley level website. They're professional, they're polished. There's no one on there. There's no supporters. The only links you can find are like a sterile info at email. And it's like, at that point, all right, is this grassroots? Is this a web designer that paid, very little money to put this together? Or is this a institutionally backed website that has a specific purpose?
There's also another group known as Indivisible. They've backed some of the protests here in Minnesota we've done some reporting on, but you've investigated this group. Some of their questionable claims, what are they trying to achieve, Bronson?
Well, I would definitely say that they're the least grassroots of any group listed so far. They started in 2016, and their initial mission was to resist Donald Trump. And since then, they've kind of carried that banner forward. And if you look at their founding with Ezra Levin and Leah Greenberg, it's DC establishment people. They had an agenda ready to go off the bat, 26 pages of what they were pushing for. And it definitely wasn't a grassroots uprising. It felt more like it was a playbook handed down from the top. And since then, they've continued this grassroots look, this grassroots approach, and they've pushed a litany of leftist ideas. But it's hard to escape the fact that since the very beginning, they were backed by the Democratic Socialists of America, ACLU, Planned Parenthood, Working Families Party, as well as the Ties Foundation. Just no surprise. That's one connector with most of these groups is the Ties money that pours into it. We run into this same idea of, okay, we're going for this grassroots approach to things, and we want the people to feel like they're connected. But at the end of it, it's all puppeteered, it's all fabricated, and none of it's truly representing what I believe most Americans would like to put forward as the ideals of America. And of course, that's all because there's litanies of money being pushed in from the left.
You put it so well in the piece, and I really do encourage people to go ahead and take a look themselves. But you wrote, if the left does one thing well, it's to convince everyone that all of their movements are seemingly grassroots. But don't let that image stick. Instead of a lovingly curated yard, think instead of a pristine golf course, strategically engineered, backed by millions of dollars, and maintained by a crew of professionals that hide behind the curtain. I think that's something that people really need to understand here. Even now, here we are 5 years after the George Floyd riots in Minneapolis, something we're still coming to grips with here. It seems more obvious now that this was all part of the playbook, these so-called peaceful protests during the Summer of Love back in 2020. You mentioned that, how Black Lives Matter has been doing this very same thing.
They kind of built on each other. Black Lives Matter was a larger movement, and the damages and destruction were a lot more vast, but the same playbook has been applied to Tesla, where you see the same groups tied Soros, Hoffman, and all these main name players on the political left that are pushing money into groups that are, representing the people and justice, and then the aftermath is completely ignored by the media, painted as mostly peaceful. And we've had this cycle going now from BLM to now to Tesla, as well as there's been campaigns against Supreme Court justices, and they're all backed by the same people. And it seems like they're just working to destabilize any sense of normalcy in the country. And when you follow the same people to the same money with the same goals and the same agendas, it starts to line out. And I think American people are seeing that. It's not about justice. It's about chaos, and that chaos is beneficial to the donors on the left.
Just when you think that this couldn't get any worse, you found out that one of the organizers of these Tesla takedown campaigns draws inspiration from none other than Luigi Manion, the suspect charged with Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, based here in Minnesota.
Yeah, Valerie Costa, who is the founder of the Troublemakers, which of all the groups who are engaged in this so far is probably the most grassroots. Looking through their donations, I didn't see any more than 100 small donations, as well as they didn't seem to be tied to Act Blue or Tides or any donations that we found yet. But it was troubling when I was watching interviews to see that she credited a lot of the action to Luigi Manion and the killer, the healthcare killing. And I was like, okay, if that's the basis of where we're starting with this, that's not a good signifier of where it would go. Like it could go, and I don't even want to say where it could go, but it's a very bad template to say, I'm taking inspiration from an assassin and applying it to a political movement that has already caused lots of violence across the country. It just doesn't look good on paper.
Horrifying. Follow the money, follow the power. You'll find the truth, just as you were saying. Do you think things are different now? Are more people finally starting to realize and understand, do you think, what's going on behind the scenes here?
I believe so. When you look at the magnitude of BLM compared to the Tesla riots that started up early February and seemingly feel like they're slowly dying out, the magnitude is way lower, and that makes me think that people are waking up to this. They're understanding that this is all fabricated. It's all for internet clicks. It's all for clout. It's to get the people going and really show that, oh, this is what Americans want. But I think Americans now understand that they don't want this. It's okay to protest. It's okay to boycott, but there's no reason to bring domestic terrorism into any political goal.
You can read the report for yourself at restoration-news.com. Bronson Winslow, again with Restoration News. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
That will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.